Welcome to The Cosmic Entrepreneur, the podcast where mystical wisdom meets the world of entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Christine, and I'm honoured to be your guide on this cosmic journey of self-discovery and business success. Each month, we'll explore the fascinating realms of spirituality, energy healing, astrology, Akashic records, many other esoteric practices, and multidimensional aspects of entrepreneurship. Through open conversations, shared experiences, and practical insights, my intention is to empower you to integrate these profound teachings into your personal and professional life, helping you manifest abundance, align to your highest timeline, and make a difference in the world. Whether you are an inspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply curious about the intersection of spirituality and success, this podcast is here to enlighten, empower, and elevate you. Hello and welcome to the Cosmic Entrepreneur Podcast. Liz, I am so happy you're here with us today. Let me just introduce you a little bit to our listeners. So Liz is a trauma-informed mentor, inner dance and Kundalini activation facilitator, and a transformational breathwork coach, a yoga and a somatics coach, and Reiki and Seiki master. So she holds various healing sessions in person in County Dublin as well as online. I think I've known you since your first course, was it Have You the Nerve? And ever since then, I'm not sure how I found you, but I just met you on Instagram and I was like, I just love this woman. And I remember it was my first course with you, and oh, it was amazing. Like, I've learned so much in those 6 weeks. And ever since then, I think I've attended some Reiki sessions, Seiki sessions, Kundalini activations. I can't wait to share more about my experiences with it. Like, they were so activating and like really mind blowing. So like, I could like scream from the rooftop, like everybody needs to try it. So like, so I'm delighted you're here because we have so much ground to cover. And I suppose I just wanted to find out, how did you get into all of this? When did you get into all of these healing modalities? How did it start? And did you know you were always connected, or was it something that kind of pushed you into like this awakening journey?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm delighted to be on your podcast. I love having the chats. So, answering your question, definitely would have been very sensitive when I was younger. Like, really hypersensitive to other people's emotions. I could walk into a room and really sense like the emotions of other people, but did not know and did not have the tools to understand how to, work with that as a gift, because it is a gift when you're hypersensitive or you have the sensitivities where you can connect in and feel what other people are feeling. We're not told how to work with those kind of, gifts, spiritual gifts, which I suppose a lot of people are born with, and we tend to shut off from it. So for a lot of the time, through my experience, I internalized other people's emotions as my own, and didn't realize that, this was something that I was picking up off, even like energetically from the land that you're living in. You can pick up off energy, and I was doing that a lot. And over time, I started to desensitize from it. I did have a little space that I used to go underneath the stairs all the time to meditate, and I had like a little prayer book, and I used to bring my dolls to mass. So I was actually meditating with my dolls, and I didn't even realize at that time. So I think it started off at a young age, and then obviously as I started to get older, different experiences, through bullying and things like that, kind of pulled me away from, connecting with myself, and I lost a lot of confidence in myself throughout the years. And I started to, just completely shut off that side of like that deeper connection with myself, and put on all these different masks to try and fit in. I actually spoke about it on my own podcast. I think it's episode 1. It's where it gets funny. The podcast is called the Titty Talks podcast with Liz
Funniest
McCorn.
podcast. I listened to the first episode. I was like, oh, she's some woman. I absolutely love it.
So, firstly, the reason for it's called Titty Talks is because if you're listening, you're like, why is it called that? Titty Talks is basically there's this message behind it. It's like getting something off your chest. And also, when I was traveling in Mexico solo, I used to like sunbathe topless, but I'd go on my Instagram and be chatting on my stories. You just see the top of my head, like. But I'd be always getting like this, loads of information be coming through that I wanted to share to people who are watching my stories. And I was like, I need to fucking do a podcast. And I was like, imagine I call the podcast Titty Talks, and that's where it's them from. Now, I've only done 2 episodes. I need to go back and do my own. But anyway, it all stemmed from in that podcast I spoke about living over in England, and yeah, coming back I lived over in England for 9 years and coming back to Ireland then at the age of 11, and trying to fit in to different culture, different people, different experiences, having an English accent. And years ago, Irish people weren't really supported over in England, especially with everything that was going on with the IRA and everything, and, bombings and stuff like that. It was very hard for Irish families to move over to England, especially with the difference in accents. And then obviously coming back to Ireland at age 11 with a full blown English accent, Cockney English. And, there was a lot of transition there, and a lot of, I think within a few months, my accent had completely switched from an English accent to an Irish accent, because I wanted to fit in with everybody else so much, and didn't want to be the one that was sticking out. I didn't want to be unique. I wanted to be part of the tribe. So there's always been an aspect of like trying to fit in to please other people or be socially accepted in a group, because if we don't fit into the tribe, we feel alone, and we're meant to be in community. So there's all these different various masks that were put up over the years to try and fit in. And they look like, wearing different hats, going out and getting absolutely destroyed most weekends was definitely a long standing part of my journey. And then it started to come to a point where um you know well, at that point, I suppose healing wasn't really very popular as it is now. Like, if we look at the younger generation, a lot of them don't even really want to drink. A lot of them have like a health mindset. Wellness is like their number one priority. Whereas, I'm not sure about you, but when I was growing up, if you booked in for a massage, you loved yourself.
Yeah.
Geez, your one over there, she looks well for some, isn't it? You got a massage, did you?
Yeah, like no, the only like cool thing to fit in was go out drinking. Let's go out into the bushes. Let's get Linda Village or whatever, and
Yeah,
just get shit faced for the weekend. And like
yeah,
that was the thing. Let's go to festivals together. And like, yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, I loved festivals and I love going out, but it was like you said, it was just trying to kind of fit in, and then you're really masking how you're feeling kind of deep inside. So whatever was going on, you're just like, you know, keep topping
yeah.
up whatever, and it was the norm. Like, yeah, and like you said, if you did something that was kind of out of sorts, people are like, oh, she's like, who do you think you are, loving yourself? Like, come back here
Exactly.
now. Yeah, let's go bushing
Yeah,
again.
there was always this suppression of like, doing something for yourself. And I think when you look at the past generations and the lineage of looking at the mother line, right? The mother, does everything for everyone else in every family nearly, right? And it's like you're following that pattern of like, actually, I'm gonna put myself first. And that there was this undercurrent of, being selfish by doing this. So I started to put myself first. Firstly, I started to feel really shit. I had to get really shit for me to shift. And it did. I was suffering with a lot of anxiety. It had come to a point where, I was working crazy hours. I was going out every weekend. I was, just burning the candle at both ends and experienced burnout. But before this, I had been through a heartbreak and stuff like that. And it had drawn me towards Reiki. So I went in for a few sessions, and I just thought, oh my god, this modality is brilliant. And I went to this lady for a while, and then she ended up moving away, and I was like, oh, can't find a Reiki lady, because they weren't that popular.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go to the doctor. I did definitely feel like I had some anxiety, depression, that kind of thing, really low mood. But then it would be fine and it would kind of dip, it would go like this. It'd be
Mm.
fine for a couple of months and then it would kind of dip. But I had a great way of hiding it, just going out at the weekend and not dealing with it. And
Yeah.
then, then I read a book called The Source. And I ended up booking in with a lady who wrote that book for energy healing. And from there, then I went into my own energy healing. And actually, my mum had started to learn Reiki level 1 around that time as well, maybe a couple of years before. And she had practiced on me. And it felt like someone was opening a key in the back of my head when she done her first healing. And I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? And she was like, I haven't even touched your head yet. I was literally have my hands over
Oh,
your crown. And I was like, it feels like you put a key in and turned. And I was like, I need to learn more about this. So this is then when I started to go down to the Reiki route. And I really feel like Reiki just opened me up
mm,
to my own inner power, because I started to see a different reality that, we don't see in the physical. Like, we have obviously our eyes to see, and we sometimes think that that's all that's out there. But if we close our eyes, there's all these other senses that get activated, and it allows us to experience different possibilities, really, as well. And yeah, Reiki kind of led me on the path then to just doing different holistic modalities. I started to learn, like, Indian head massage. I done holistic massage, and with the goal, I did have a goal of opening up my own space to do all of this, right? And this is all part time while I was doing a corporate job as well. And yeah, what happened then was really like I ended up manifesting this opportunity to go on traveling for 2 years. And yeah, the dream that I thought I had of, owning like a salon and have taken clients and leaving the corporate job and going straight into that wasn't something that, happened. So I ended up just going traveling for the 2 years, and I got so much experience from traveling for 2 years. It was amazing. Yeah.
yeah. And how was like what was the final push for you to go traveling? Like because you were like, okay, I have all these plans, I'm gonna stay here, I'm gonna have clients and open up my own business, and then you're like, no, I'm gone. Like what was the final push?
So it happened over a period of a couple of years. It was like things just, I went through a massive purge. And if
Mm,
anyone doesn't know what the word purge is, it's like things coming up to the surface to clear. So as I started to work more with my life force energy, the universal energy that's within us, and Reiki, and doing more and more work on myself, my awareness started to open up, right? And sometimes we can have like this tunnel vision and we can only see one thing and we think that's for our highest good. And that can be like a relationship, a job, situation, behaviors. You're kind of caught in this comfort zone of what you know. And then as you start to work on yourself, your consciousness and your awareness starts to expand. And then you have an insight of all of this other possibilities that are there that maybe you haven't seen before. So as I started to do more work on myself, I started to kind of zoom out of my experience, and things started to shift. Like friendships started to shift, my drinking behavior started to shift, partying behaviors. I realized that, this isn't the life that I want for myself. And I started to make and see different changes. I started working with cacao medicine, plant medicine, my first plant medicine. And I was in a relationship at the time, and I remember just feeling really foggy and not having clarity.
yeah.
And I was like working with the medicine with intention. And I was like, show me clarity. There's something that's blocking me. And then I remember just waking up one morning and I was going, oh my God, I'm not supposed to be in this relationship. So yeah. And then once I obviously with cacao, as you know, like I always tell anyone that comes to the circles that cacao opens the door for you and it allows you to see, but it's up to you whether you decide to walk through it. And
Mm,
at that point, cacao medicine had opened the door for me, and it was up to me whether I decided to walk through. So, I couldn't unsee the message and I had to walk through it. And
yeah.
there was definitely resistance. I'm not saying like, once you get the download or the message that you're like, yeah, okay, that's grand. No, because
Yeah.
you're trying to build the courage to do it. Like taking
Yeah.
these leaps and these jumps, it's like you're allowing different parts of yourself to die, in a sense. The scared version, the version that doesn't think you're good enough to receive, the opportunities or the new relationships, or, so there was different parts of myself that I had to really reparent and go, we're doing this together. We're safe to take this step. Let's go. So yeah, there was a lot of that happening over the course of maybe 3 years, where I left a relationship. I left a housing situation that I was in that was really toxic as well. And then I left a corporate job, which I was in for 10 years, which is also really benefit me, in the sense that, I could pay my bills, I could, fund the lifestyle of partying. And then that shifted to all the courses that I wanted to do to better myself. So I was getting an amazing, financial abundance from it, but it wasn't serving my purpose. So then, yeah, I had this idea that I'm going to manifest money.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a Jim Carrey documentary, right?
Mhm.
Or like a clip where he said he wrote himself a check of €1 million, and he wrote down this check, and he said, for acting services rendered, and he folded the check for 1 million and put it into his wallet, right? And he said every now and again he'd look at the check, and he'd, you know, imagine and visualize that this money was going to come to him. So I was like, I'm going to do this. Now, this is years ago, before manifestation was a thing, right?
Yeah.
I was actually, probably 5 years ago. And so I wrote this check 3 years before I manifested money. And I had this check up on my notice board. I drew it out. I wrote down the codes with date of birth of me, my family, signed the back of the check, and I wrote the amount for, for what was it? From the universal law of abundance, um, money due to you, something like this. I can't remember. I have a picture of it. I must send it to you. So I put it up on my notice board. And then as things started, and I kept with my visualization, I was doing all my affirmations, present affirmations, and doing, the work on myself. And then things started to shift in work. Things started to get really toxic. There was different things coming in where I was like, something isn't what it seems, and I feel like there's shifts happening, but we're only being told so much. Anyway, there was redundancy ending up there after 3 years, and I ended up getting the opportunity for that. So I was like, oh my god, got the exact amount that I had written on the check,
Oh,
which is
wow.
fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So this just shows how powerful we are when we trust and believe in ourselves, and we believe that we are, you know, co-creators with the universe. We can create anything that we desire. So that obviously allowed me the opportunity then to travel for 2 years, and it was the push. Then
Yeah.
COVID happened, and I was able to, I was working for a good few months during COVID from home, got the redundancy then, and then was able to travel to Mexico. Well, I went to Mexico because I wasn't vaccinated, and that was the only place that would let me in. And I had this in my head, I'm going traveling.
Yeah, 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 because it was a tough time, and a lot of people were like, "Shit, we can't go anywhere, can't do anything," and you're like, "Well, I
Yeah,
can. This is the only place, and I'm going." And that was just like, yeah, I remember just watching your journey, and it was just like you're like, "I'm a free fucking spirit, you can't
yeah,
contain the cage. Off I go. See you later." And I was like, fair play to her. I was like, "Oh God!" And then I was thinking, geez, she must have like some balls, like just to leave and do it by yourself, because do you know what, then you'll be listening to people, oh sure, you can't be going by yourself, like, you're a girl, you're a woman, what if you get kidnapped and
oh, I
things like
had
that,
so much of that. I had so much of that. There was so, especially for my brothers, they were like, "You're going where? Mexico by yourself? No, you're not."
Well,
Well, the narrative was like, "Well, you can't leave. It's COVID." And I was like, "Who told you that?" And he was like, "Of course you can't. Sure, we can't leave 15, whatever it is, 15 kilometers outside the radius." And I was like, "Yeah, but we can leave the country." No, you can't. Everyone thought I was after losing the plot, especially because I didn't get vaccinated, and a lot of my friends were all vaccinated, and I had just done so much work on myself at that point that I really knew and felt deep inside me what was truth and what was not. And I
yeah,
was only speaking to a client about this recently. Like, we have love and we have fear, and love is truth and fear is false, right?
yeah,
And when we are holding trauma or experiences in our body that stem from fear, we're holding faults in the body. So it's hard for us to find our truth. So a way to, transmute that is to really allow ourselves to be in love and compassion with whatever is present in the body that's fear. And that can be, bullying as a child, that can be traumatic experiences when you were younger, whatever it can be. Allowing yourself to be present with that with love actually transmutes that. And then when you're transmuting that emotion from the body, that trauma, it allows you to find your truth inside. When you connect with the truth inside, that's like your compass, your intuition. That is a resonance in your body that knows what is true and what's false on the external. And you have that inner deep knowing of, that doesn't feel right in my body. Okay, I'm just gonna not make a decision on that. My body is saying no, whereas there was so much chaos at that point, whenever that was 2 years ago. There was so much chaos that everybody was in the head, nobody was in the body, and people didn't know what was true and what was false. And we were so conditioned to believe in what was broadcasted on the news, on the radio, and the systems, that nobody really understood what was going on unless you had a foundation of how to work with your intuition. So,
Yeah.
you know, I suppose trust in myself has been a massive journey, and that's really been reflected back to me through different experiences when I went traveling. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that, I
Like,
suppose, go on, sorry, yeah.
oh, I know, I was just saying, yeah, trust in yourself, like, like
Mm.
just to like, or I believe this is my truth, and you just went with it. And you kind of went against the grain, kind of like going, you're telling me what to do, but I'm just going to listen to my body, my intuition. And I was the same. I was like, half my family were like, no, like we'll do it, and then half
Yeah,
were like, no, no. And then I was just like, no, but this is my truth. And then people were like, well, sure, why are you not doing it like everybody else is doing it? And I was like, but like, that's exactly why. Like, use your, like,
yeah,
it's up to you. It's, if you want to do it, yes, if this is your choice. Like, Bri was like, no, dead against it. Then you were constantly watching the news, like the number of deaths and stuff, and you're like, people were constantly feeding that fear to themselves. Yeah.
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 And like when we look at fear is base chakra, and the base is the root of our spine, right? And if we're getting hit from the base with fear, that stops us from connecting to the rest of the chakras in the body and receiving information from spirit as well. So if we're constantly being bombarded by fear, it's like cutting a tree from the tree trunk, getting an axe and chipping away at the tree trunk. And eventually that tree is going to topple, or it's just not going to be as connected because it's being chipped away from the root. And if we look at us, there is so much fear that's fed to us on a constant basis that is just trying to take us out of our center. So
Yeah.
we really need to consciously be aware of what we are allowing into our space, protecting our energy from that. And I actually just done a workshop last night on this cord cutting, clearing and protection workshop with energy healing. And that just really gives tools and incantations and support for people on the journey who are allowing themselves to, take back their energy and protect themselves in the times that we're in at the moment, especially
Yeah.
when we're being bombarded with phones. We have so much access to ourselves that, everyone has access to us now, whereas years ago that wasn't the way. So
I feel like there's more and more psychic attacks because
yes,
like we're so connected, social media, and everybody's watching everybody. And I think some people don't realize how it really affects us energetically. Like
yeah,
someone might be watching you, and but they might be jealous of something, or but they don't realize how that energy can really affect you. So it's just amazing that you were doing the workshop on that as well, because I think more and more
yeah,
people will be aware of this, because we're moving into this time of when energy is more kind of prominent. People are getting more and more sensitive to these kind of
yes.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, I spoke about this last night as well, that as our vibration rises, right, and manifestation is almost a trend now, and people know that in order to manifest, you need to increase your vibration. But
Yeah.
the thing that's not spoken about is as you increase your vibration, there are lower, denser energies that want to and are attracted to your light because it's a frequency. As the frequency increases, your light increases because you're embodying more light and you're clearing the toxicity. If anyone has been successful in any manifestation, they'll tell you that they've had to jump through a number of different hoops, let go of things, toxic things, in order to receive what it is that they need or what they've tried to manifest. So that's a process of increasing vibration, increasing light in the body. With that, people are drawn to it. It's like a moth to a flame,
Yeah.
and they're not taught to psychically protect in a way. And phones energetically, like as I was doing a healing through Zoom online, the energy, my intent is to send energy through to the person receiving this through a screen. So if we're looking at screens constantly, on our phones, and people aren't protecting their energy and putting their phone in a ball of white light, they're leaving themselves open, especially first thing in the morning, going onto your phone. You're just waking up out of the dream state. You're at a different brainwave frequency that is really easy to reprogram your mind. And if people are looking and going onto platforms that are sending out different energies that we're not really sure of what's coming through our screens, we have more, or they have more accessibility to our energy. So
Yeah.
this is really about like getting centered and conscious of what we're exposing our energy to. And this goes for everything, like working with people, working with plant medicine facilitators, gurus, all of these people that you will see that are put up on a pedestal, whether they do it themselves or you're putting someone up on a pedestal. If you feel like you're doing that, you're putting your power in someone else's hands. Always take back your power and realize that you have everything inside of you, and that people around you, plant medicines, all of that are just tools and guides to support you back to yourself. And if there is someone you're working with who doesn't show you that, then I start to be asking questions. Anyone who is that you meet on your journey should always be redirecting you back to your body,
Yeah.
because that's where your power is.
Yeah, yeah. It's like don't look outside of yourself for,
Yeah,
to be like activated. And like, but the thing is like, yes, okay, we love working and collaborating and just like healers need healing too. But it's just like, again, bring it back to your body because you have the power within. It's like, you were talking about Reiki at the start. It's like Reiki, I think, is like the initial start of everybody gonna get activated. So even if you had like one session and then you decided maybe I want to do this for myself, or even just finding a Reiki practitioner that you kind of trust, just keep you like it just shifts you in so many different ways. And
yeah,
I think Reiki is like the number one thing I suppose that I would like recommend to people, just to do it for yourself and just work with your own energy rather than kind of constantly like looking for stuff outside of you. But like I
yeah,
murder in a way that like I want to try this because I just want to dip my toe in different things, but that's okay. That's just exploring. But just as long as you remember, I want to go back kind of to me because it's not like I have the power, and it's not like from the egotistical way. It's that like we honestly have the life source energy within us that we can heal ourselves, so.
exactly.
Yeah, and I know like on your travels, you've had many amazing experiences and many kind of scary ones. And one of them, like I want to maybe even get into later. Maybe I don't want to re-traumatize with the storm, was it? Yeah,
Oh
but then
yeah,
the storm, and then there was like psychic attacks and energy vampires, and yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So how did you? I think you experienced a few of them on your travels, haven't you?
yeah,
And what did
yeah.
you do then to be like, okay, I know I'm drained. How did you even know that you were like drained? Like, how did you know you're like, okay, there's something up with me. It's not my energy.
Because I had a constant shadow that kept coming up, but it was amplified. So it was something that I was aware of, that I had worked through in the past many a time, but it was tenfold, and it just didn't seem right. And anything that I tried to, anytime I tried to move forward, it was like I was pulled back.
Mhm.
I was having a lot of physical issues as well, like rash all over my body, all over my back, that would just come and go. And yeah, things just weren't adding up for me. Like there was multiple things going wrong. Computers would break out of nowhere.
Oh
Obviously,
my
I was
God.
in that massive hurricane
Yeah,
by myself. Just crazy stuff was going on. Like,
that is
um,
insane. When you were
yeah,
like sharing your stories, like I was like, oh my God, she's damn in the middle of the hurricane, and you're like there with your video going. It was literally coming into your house. I was like, please
but
God, she's all right.
the
Like,
thing, the thing was, right, we were told, I was in Mazunte at the time, and interestingly enough, I was halfway through doing an integrated somatic trauma therapy
yeah,
course. So that was going on for 3 weeks, and halfway through it, the hurricane hit was we got news a hurricane was to hit. So a couple of days before, and I was in, like I said, Mazunte, and then the hurricane was to hit Porto Escondido. So it was like an hour and a half away from Mazunte. And we were like, "Do you know what? We were told it's fine. The locals all said it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's got, we're too far away for that hurricane to, hit Mazunte." So like as the time got nearer, the course people that were doing the course said, "Listen, we're not going to continue. We'll wait until it passes because there's people traveling from Porto Escondido to Mazunte to do the course. So we'll wait until the storm passes and then we'll continue." And yeah, basically at the last minute, I had got all my supplies, right? Loads of candles. I was like, after buying a block of cacao, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be beautiful." I had no idea what I was getting myself in for. Like, I was like, "It's not going to hit us, but I have some time to myself. I'm not on this course. I'll go over some, material that I was learning, all this."
yeah.
And at the last minute, the hurricane went and done a 90-degree turn and went to Mazunte instead of Porto Escondido. And I was on a beach hut at the time, which was kind of up off. It was a good bit, like maybe 15 minutes away from the beach walking, but it was up on a hill. And now I had a thatched kind of roof. Now it was a strong thatch roof. And I was like, just in case the strong wind, I'm going to go into a concrete roof. I said it to the guy. He was like, "Listen, fella who owned it, he's like, you'll be fine." He's like, "There's never been anything like that here before." Anyway, I went into the concrete roof. Thank God I did, because for it started to be, it was like it was massive turbulence I was in, and it was like I felt like I was on a plane. The door was banging. I was in this one bedroom thing. I ended up having to pee into a bucket. I was eating peanut butter from a jar. I was holding the door up for 4 hours. Rain was pissing
Oh
in
my
through the
God.
gap in the door. There was flood and everything in, like everything was soaking. In the end, oh, it's just madness. Like, and this, it's actually coming up to the anniversary of it. And I do always think, like, when it
Did you
happens the
like
first
mark
time,
it? The
yeah,
time
it's
is
just like,
fine.
because I'm sure there's an imprint of that in my nervous system, because obviously sometimes we can have experiences that happen to us. And it's like when someone gets sick at the same time every year, or they get really burnt out at the same time every year. There's a nervous system imprint of something from the past where the nervous system is asking you to connect to that present emotion that never, or a part of you that never got the need that it needed at that time. So it's coming up soon. It's in May, so we'll see how my body responds. But yeah, that was a really difficult period. And I was in so much shock afterwards. Like I I ended up going to, there was like a support group, because there was loads of people who were stranded, loads of locals who had no water, who were living in shacks, they were completely destroyed. An old woman where trees had fallen down into her garden, and she had no way of exiting, no food, nothing like that. And I ended up joining a support group like 2 days later, and we all went out in these vans with water, nappies, food, dog food, like food for people, toilet roll, all the necessities to help the people who were kind of stranded, who just got destroyed by the hurricane. So yeah, then I had to relocate to Porto Escondido, because at that point Porto Escondido didn't have anything wrong with them. They had prepared with sandbags, everything. Everything had shut down. People had left Porto Escondido, and it turned out that they never got hit. It was Mazunte, where I was, that got hit.
That's mad.
So yeah, it was mad. It's really difficult experience, but I'm
Yeah.
like that. I learned so much about myself during that, like
Yeah.
so
And
much.
yeah, and how funny, like you literally just done the somatics course and you're like learn about trauma, and then 3 weeks later it's like the universe is like, well, there you go. Like this is your
It was
test. Or
bang, yeah, it was bang and smack in the middle of the course. So after the hurricane, I had to go and finish the rest of my course. And it was actually perfect because we were doing so much body work on each other, and allowing ourselves to release oxytocin in the body to help complete trauma cycles through a process called TVM. It's the triple vagal method, which is something that I'm bringing in working with clients as well. It's a nervous system support basically. So we were doing a lot of that to help ourselves afterwards and calm down and really support ourselves through the experience of being in a hurricane.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, it's just mad that that happened. The irony of that, like,
yeah. Like
and yeah.
3 weeks.
And what happened was I had to like what you call a hitchhike out of Mazunte. So what happened was
Oh,
when the storm ended, right? It was crazy. I remember opening the door, looking out at the sea, and like there was three-quarters of the sea that I could see that was just like brown. And the water level had risen. So I was like, oh my God, freaking out, thinking that there was going to be mudslides, because that's the first thing that came into my head. So I started to go from different nervous system states. I went from calm, I was actually calm, thinking that everything was going to be fine, to fight or flight. Oh shit, things are starting to ramp up here. None of the, as I was holding the door for 4 hours. And
yeah,
then I fled. I was like, I need to get the fuck out of here because I do not feel safe. There's going to be mudslides. That's the first thing. So my natural body response was flee, move, run, get out, find safety. So
yeah.
safety for me then was getting a black bag, because I had no jacket, or,
Oh my God.
because it was
A black bag.
roasting in Mazunte. Yeah. I just grabbed my backpack, took my laptop, my passport, and a few supplies. So a jar of peanut butter, because I didn't know when I was going to get my food. I was after eating all my supplies. And
Oh,
then, yeah, just was walking out, and it was dark. Obviously, there's no electricity, no phone network. It was, trees were broken on the road, all this like blocking the way out. I was climbing over trees, but then there was dogs that were, in Mexico, if you've ever been there, there's loads of wild dogs, right? And they were all scared, terrified, obviously, because of the storm. And I'm like it's getting dark. It's still kind of raining, but it's not as windy. I'm climbing over trees, and up ahead I'm hearing fucking dogs barking. And I was like, oh my God, they don't sound the friendliest. And I was like, what am I gonna do? Like, So I was walking, and yeah, this a man, two men, with a big massive dog full of tattoos. One had a machete, and they were chopping down some of the trees, right? And the first thing that came into my head was, now this is trigger warning for anyone listening, like, oh my God, I'm gonna be raped. Like, that is the first thing that I thought, because tattoos on their face, all this, and they were like, you shouldn't be out here on your own. Why, in broken English.
yeah.
And I just couldn't speak then at that point. I was trying to speak. I was like, I went into freeze mode. So I had gone from all the different nervous system states, and it's like I was watching myself. This happened to myself. And then they were like, walk with us. What's your name? Blah, 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 in a Mexican accent, and you're out in, I felt like I was out in the fucking middle of the jungle, to be honest. So at that point, then, yeah, they were like, walk with us. You shouldn't be on your own. And I heard this person up ahead, right? Like an English Irish accent he had. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds familiar. And, you know, he was drinking, he had a bottle of beer in his hand, right?
Oh,
And I was like, oh my God. And he was like, are you okay, love, in this accent? And I was like, oh my God, are you Irish? Like, that's the only thing. And he was like, no, no. And then he was saying something about his granddad being Irish or something. But his accent was something that was familiar to me. And he was like, you shouldn't be out here. Are you okay with them? And he was like, I think you're in shock, love. I think you're in shock. Listen, come in here. There's a number of us here in it was like this revamped hostel thing, and across from it was a church, right? And I could just see the cross, and I was like, oh my God, that's a sign. I'm safe here. I'm safe here.
Oh
And
my
I
God.
wouldn't be particularly holy. Like, I wouldn't be holy at all. I'm more into like source energy, and, I wouldn't be thinking about Jesus really, and all of that. I'd be more, yeah. So I was saying I managed to say to him, is there any women in there? Is there any women? Because I was like, I don't want to go into a house full of men.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I just felt so like in complete, survival mode. I was like
yeah.
completely freaked. And he was like, yeah, there's some Italian women in here. And I told them, can you bring them out to the front because I didn't want to go in? They were like, yeah, everything's fine. Went in. Sure, it was all flooded. Ended up staying there. Everyone had their feet up on the beds. There's all water. And the story gets worse, to be honest, because there was a man in there who said, after a storm, there's an alligator.
What?
There's a lots of. I'm telling you, this is how bad it was. I was like, you could actually write a novel on this experience. And I have photos because whenever I told anyone afterwards, I was taking photos when I was on my own, saying if these photos, obviously I have no network, but they might go to the cloud. So if anything happens to me, because I have an iPhone, my phone memories may go to the cloud, and my family, if my family may know that, right, this is where she last took her photos or whatever, if I go missing.
Crazy, yeah.
So that's the mindset that I was in. Anyway, I was in this house then, and the water was like flooded, obviously. And your man said, put the feet up. He was like, we just need to be careful because the alligators can come into land after a storm. And at that point, I was like, what are we doing down here? Is there an upstairs? Can we, I was freaking out.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, they were like smoking hash, and it must have been a party hostel because they were took the opportunity of, oh, there's going to be a hurricane that won't hit Mazunte, let's just go and get drunk. And but
Right.
obviously I felt so unsafe. And yeah, I was like, can I go upstairs? Well, ended up going upstairs. The roof had come off, and there was a mattress that I was just lying on that was completely soaked. I could hear mice and everything,
Oh
like,
my
or fucking
God.
probably rats it was. So I didn't get any sleep. And the next day, then, I remember just like thinking, what do I do? Like, do I go to Porto Escondido? Which I ended up hitchhiking out of Mazunte. I just chanced it that I'm going to Porto Escondido because I had been staying there for 3 months prior. So I knew Porto Escondido was like, yeah, I kind of had my bearings with Porto Escondido. I hadn't been long in Mazunte, and I felt a little bit more safe going there. So I hitchhiked out, and yeah, ended up going back to Porto Escondido, and the course ended up being relocated to there because everything in Mazunte was fucking destroyed at that point. So yeah, finished the trauma course there, and yeah, that was the experience. It was mad.
Like, I can't even begin to, I don't even know where to start because I'm listening to you and I'm like, oh my God, my heart is just so triggering. And then like, it's just
Mm.
scary. And like, just to go from like calm to like actually freezing, it's just like, oh my God, like I'm actually frozen. I can't even run. I can't do anything. I'm just so shocked. Like
Yeah,
everything that you said is, it's like a story from, I don't know, like thousands of years ago. Do you know, when like a tiger is going to attack you, and it's like, oh my God, you're literally in there. It's not like this mental kind of stuff. It was actually real. Like I just can't. It's just mad.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny as well because when you say to people, "Oh, I was in a hurricane," oh yeah, I was in one as well. Like, and we had to go to the hotel, and like, yeah, my experience is different from yours. And it's like trauma, I suppose. When you say, I haven't got trauma, or someone else has worse trauma than me, like everyone's trauma is individual to
Yeah.
them, and everyone's experience is so different to them. Even if you say someone was bullied, and say I was bullied, is someone else's experience can be so different. And I suppose
Yeah.
this is where we need to have that awareness as well, that just because someone has gone through the same thing, it doesn't exactly mean that they went through the exact same case of events, and that their nervous system hasn't been affected in a different way compared to maybe how someone else's nervous system is able to handle it. Because at that point, my allostatic load for stress had just been completely maximized. So we all have these stress levels. If you think about a wheelbarrow, and say you're filling that up with stress, right? like, and you just imagine filling that up with bricks, and the bricks represent stress. And at some point, there's going to be no room for any more bricks, right? It's going to reach its capacity. And, you know, for me, there was just more and more and more bricks being put on top of that wheelbarrow, to a point where the wheelbarrow couldn't move. It couldn't, you know. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And whereas some people they'll have a couple of bricks on it, but they can still lift up the wheelbarrow and move off. I was
Yeah.
just completely frozen at that point. And this is
Okay.
how our allostatic stress levels can affect our nervous system, you know.
Yeah, that's like the last like stage probably. Is it like the freeze response where you're like, oh my God, I'm literally frozen. I
Yeah.
can't do anything. And yeah, it's like I was literally just having a chat about to a friend of mine how different perspective, like, you know, everyone's like reality is so different. Like, so even I was
Yeah.
saying to my sister, do you know, how was your childhood? And she was like, oh sure, I love mine. And I was like, mine was kind of shit. Like mine was like, you know, I mine was kind of crappy. Like, and she was like, no, no, mine. And I was like, did we grow up in the same house? And we have. It's just that her perspective was like, it was amazing, it was fun. And I was like, I was just bored all the time. And I was like, this is shit. And
Mm.
like, you know, I like, obviously there was good times, but our perspectives of our like past are so different. I'm like, oh my God, I've like loads inner child healing to do and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, I'm fine. I'm like, what? So it's
Yeah.
just not how, yeah.
And this is where, like, that's a great example to use. You know, when you're on your healing journey, and relationships can be really difficult when you start to move past being a person that someone has a set version of you as. So if someone sees you as the timid people pleaser, someone who is maybe in fawn state in their nervous system because of the experiences they've had in the past, trauma at, you know, when you were a child, and then you start to do the work on yourself, and you start to move out of those behaviors that were sometimes seen as part of your personality, you start to shift your personality to something else that's more in alignment with who you really are. And that can be triggering for other people.
It's mad. You could see that with people that you went to school with or people that you were hanging out with. And obviously people change, but then people just have that perception of you like years and years ago. And you're like, no, I'm not that like girl anymore. I'm completely different. And in so many different ways. You were saying more people are kind of awakened now in their 20s, where it took me a while.
Yeah,
I had to really go through so many shitty relationships and whatnot. Then at 30 be like, oh, okay, actually let's just decondition and let's look at our stuff to actually
exactly.
get rid of what
But
we don't need.
the thing is, as well, because we've been doing the work on ourselves, right? And whoever else is listening to this podcast as well, I'm sure you've been doing the work on yourselves, or you've been drawn to do some sort of work. And whatever work that you've been doing, that feeds into the collective consciousness, so that any souls that are born on the planet are being in a consciousness that is not as
Heavy.
suppressive. So
Mm.
there's more openness for them to be their true authentic selves, which is not masking, not trying to fit into the societal conditions, and, you know, paving a different way. So the work that we have done, right, we've paved the way for the younger generation to actually be in their truth. And our generations before have paved the way for us to be in our truth. And whether that looked like different timelines for maybe, you know, us, mine was like kind of late 20s, early 30s, where things started to really make sense to me. You know, things didn't seem as I thought they were, you know, and it was a gentle unraveling of that over a number of different years. Whereas, like, the 20-year-olds, 15-year-olds, whatever, they're coming in, some of them are amazing, you know, business heads, and they're
Yeah.
just, they don't have this conditioning that we have, but they're
Yeah.
coming into a different collective consciousness, which is allowing them to expand a lot quicker than we have. So, you know, this is where we're probably going to learn a lot from the younger generation.
Yeah.
They're coming in with special gifts, and yeah, they're going to be our teachers. They already are. I know
Yeah.
they, like, when I'm around my nieces and nephew, I learn so much from them.
Yeah.
They're just sparks of light, and they're not conditioned like we are. We're constantly unraveling what we've learned, and we're
Yeah.
trying to
We're
get
like, yeah,
back
yeah.
to source.
That's it. Like, yeah, we're like deconditioning, deprogramming. You're like, okay, we're gonna like break the cycle of like, oh, you have to
Yeah.
work hard and blah blah blah, all the different narratives that play over. And then these new kids are coming in, and we have to learn how to like do the step by step. Let's start with Reiki and let's just go. And then like these kids are like already channeling life source energy
Already.
straight away just by
Yeah.
looking at it. You're like, Jesus.
Yeah.
So,
They're just smart. They know. And the thing is, like, when they're young, they're not as conditioned because they're going into the systems, right? Okay. Creativity is the right hemisphere of the brain. And we're put into systems that are left hemisphere, which is all thinking. And, that can box us into certain ways of being. We're asked to wear the same uniform. We're all asked to tie your hair back, look a certain way. You're not allowed to dye your hair. This is the way it was for us in school anyway. You
yeah.
have to learn these intrinsic things that you're never going to use outside of when you leave school. What's the value in that? Like, what kind of systems are we supporting our children with? Um, and obviously, there has to be some sort of structure, but it can be done in a different way where we actually encourage people to use the right hemisphere of the brain, the creativity, because that is what is going to create change. We need people who are thinking outside of the box. We need people who are visionaries, and the next generation are that. So allowing them to have the power within them to connect to that. But that comes from, and I'll speak it, this is more kind of Kundalini, I suppose, like your sexual energy, your creative energy, your life force energy. That is where we get all these creative juices and creative energy ideas from. It's our inspiration, our life force energy. But if children are confused and there is a narrative that is pushing confusion being put into schools with sexuality, that can also affect them from connecting to their power because they're unsure of, who they really are. So I suppose supporting and nourishing the future children in, allowing them to be sovereign, authentic, nourishing them to move forward in the paths that they feel is right for them, and trying to block out the noise, the influential noise that they're being surrounded by all the time through phones and,
Yeah.
the imprinting that's going on.
Yeah, like we have to be so careful, like, yeah, as to like what the kids watch, and like you just be mad, like even on YouTube, I'd be like, oh, my little guy, like the stuff that's just on, I'm like, what is going on? I have to like switch it off. Like, you're not watching that anymore. Even on like the kids' YouTube, somehow the weirdos come on and start saying weird shit, and I'm like, oh my God, you can't be listening to that. So I have to
Yeah.
be kind of on it, be like, okay, what are you watching today? And just so that they're not being kind of brainwashed into,
Yeah.
using bad language and stuff like that. And I have to be like, you have to be so careful then when I talk, say, to my partner about stuff, that like we have our worries about whatever, because I know he's listening. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to condition him in the background, because like I realize how I've picked up on things, and now I'm kind of like looking back, I'm like, Jesus, that is not my truth. Like, but this is what was in
Yeah.
my environment. And then I'm trying to be very cautious as to how I speak around my little guy, because he's listening to everything. He's like a sponge, and then he's kind of
Absolute strangers.
reacting from
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And they're just so intuitive as well. He'd be like, Mommy, why are you mad? And I'm like, oh, I'm not mad. I'm grand, and he's like, no, you're mad. I'm like, oh my God. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they're
They're
just, yeah.
frustrated. Yeah. And they're constantly reflecting back an aspect of your inner child that's within you that didn't get its needs met. Um,
Yeah.
so and a lot of the time, like, people don't realize that, the child is a massive healer. It's a reflector that is basically showing you what's going on inside. And yeah, they're the biggest gifts. They really are. So I'm looking forward to one day having my own and seeing the lessons I get from them. I'm sure they'll have loads for me.
I want to ask you about the fun things that you've experienced. Like, because I know we're like at nearly an hour now. I'm like, because I feel like I actually forgot we were recording a podcast.
I know. Went into general shit chat as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really
Um,
did have some amazing experiences. Like, over those 2 years, I done a lot of training, like in things that I loved. Really, from burnout, I was mad for the gym, right? Before I left traveling, I was really into lifting weights and, getting the best personal best, all this kind of thing, doing pull-ups, all that, really
Yeah.
doing hit exercises as well. And then when I burnt out, I went more into yoga. And yeah, that really started my journey. I was redirected more to something that was more supportive for my nervous system. So then as I was traveling, I started to do different yoga courses. I done uh, two yin yoga courses, one in Bali, one in Mexico. I done a vinyasa teacher training course, which is quite fast paced. Kind of threw myself into the deep end there, but I learned a lot. I tend to do that a lot now on reflection. I throw myself into the deep end and just expect myself to swim with no rubber bands.
Yeah.
But look, it's worked out so far.
Best way
Um,
to learn, like, yeah.
yeah, this is it. So yeah, and then I done my breathwork training, transformational breathwork training in Bali, and I just met so many like really inspiring people.
Mhm.
Um, I had different experiences where I went to see Chichen Itza. It's like different pyramids in Mexico. Immersed myself with the food and the cultures, and tried to learn Spanish. Like I was there in Mexico for 11 months, so you would think I'd be fluent in Spanish. No, no. I think I was getting over the hurricane for a good portion of that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was being kind to myself. But
Yeah.
yeah, beautiful beaches, like what do you call that? The hot air balloons I was
Yeah.
on. I've
Oh,
done a parachute jump.
oh my
Done
God.
lots of like really what you call that, daredevilish kind of stuff. Like just
Yeah.
really amazing experiences.
Yeah.
And
And
like
yeah. And yes, it was like, because I mean, you were like really like building up around, I'll do this course, I want to do this. And you just were really going for it. And like, at what point were you like, I want to do an ayahuasca ceremony?
so yeah, so
That's
it
what I was
happened
like.
when
Yes.
yeah, so in Mexico, lots of, obviously the hurricane happened and there was lots of different things going on. And at that, I was actually in a mentorship at the time, and it was a long few months mentorship. And, I was kind of realizing that there was a number of things going wrong. And, was noticing other people in the mentorship were also experiencing some challenges. And, it
Oh,
was something that I had paid for upfront. I think I had paid €3,000 for 6 or 9 months. Can't remember exactly how long it was, but something felt a bit off, and I didn't listen to my body initially, because I had paid, up front, and there was money attached, and I had this connection of, maybe I'm just ignoring my shadow. And yeah, I had started to notice some things felt off. So anyway, decided to travel to a different country, went to Bali, and things started to just really, I felt really blocked. And my energy work had stopped working. I was doing energy work, and I didn't feel like the energy was coming out. I had kind of lost my connection to my guides, felt like there was something that was after being cut, just disconnected. And I felt like, I need to do a clearing, or there's something, that's not really aligning with my energy. And I was saying, okay, and I had done Cambo a couple of years before in Ireland. I had done it twice here. So I knew Cambo was something that is a plant medicine that would be beneficial in helping me to purge and detox whatever was going on. So I was saying, right, if I'm to do Cambo, send me a frog, right? And the next day, a frog came into where I was staying in Bali, into the room. I have a picture of it and everything, a video. And I was like, oh my
oh,
God, I don't fucking believe it. So, and here I was running around the room trying to pick up the frog, right? And the frog, I never realized how long their legs are. Like, it's actually mad. But anyway, this frog came in and I was like, that's my sign. So I was in a number of different WhatsApp groups in Bali, healing groups, all of this different thing. It's kind of how you meet people in Bali. There's lots of different WhatsApp groups. So I put in, can anyone recommend a Cambo facilitator? And I set the intention that I only wanted to work with someone of the highest divine light and all of that. And a girl messaged me back and said, this guy, he's brilliant. I've sat with him a number of different times, messaged him. And he wrote back almost straight away and said, we're actually doing a ceremony tomorrow. You have enough time to fast, because you need to fast for 12 hours prior to the ceremony. So yeah, I was like, oh my God, like this is mad. So I was like, right, okay, I'll go. And he said, you're in luck. There's actually a shaman over from, where was he? I think he was from Brazil.
Hi guys, thanks for listening. Part 2 is coming next week. Thank you for allowing me to be your guide on this cosmic and entrepreneurial journey. I hope this episode inspired you in some way and would love to hear your thoughts. So send me a message on my Instagram at christinemar.co, and don't forget to subscribe, leave a 5-star review and share this episode with a friend. Until next time.